Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Aliya Sternstein, Senior Correspondent for NextGov, and today's viewcast, today's Threatwatch viewcast, is called Information Security from the Enterprise to the Employee. Events like this wouldn't be possible without the support of our underwriters, so I'd like to take a moment to recognize the exclusive underwriters of today's viewcast: General Dynamics Information Technology. A bit later, Government Executive Media Group Custom Content Editor Mark Bocelli will sit down with Nick Lashok to continue the conversation on information security in the workforce. And then at the end of our discussion, I will turn to you, our viewers, for your own questions. So if you have any right now, start tweeting at us at hashtag ThreatWatchViewcast. And now I would like to introduce our special guests for today. First, we have Ernest McDuffie, who is at NIST leading NICE, which stands for the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, and he has been there since the get-go of the program in 2010, and it aims to educate employees and techies from nursery school up until they retire about how not to become the weakest link, which is what the subject of our viewcast is today. If you are familiar with the Target breach, that episode was allegedly caused by an HVAC contractor who left some credentials to exposed, and hackers were able to get into Target's payment system and cause identity theft by taking credit card numbers. So Ernest will talk about how not to let that happen. He was educated in Florida. He got his PhD and his master's degree at the Florida Institute of Technology. And then I just want to mention, because I think it's absolutely wonderful, I was writing a story about something he did a few years ago, and he took employees who had been laid off from the shuttle program and turned them into cybersecurity pros. Our next guest is Bill Hill, and he is the Chief Information Security Official for MITRE. And MITRE is a nonprofit organization that consults the government on research and development. And Bill's role is also very related to what we're discussing today. He educates his own workforce and is in charge of the internal security at MITRE. So with that, let's kick things off. Okay, so how do you not become the weakest link at a federal agency? What actions might someone at an agency inadvertently or intentionally take to become the weakest link that lets in hackers? Ernest?
So that's a very good question. I think the important part there is the intentional versus non-intentional actions. Certainly mistakes happen all the time. We're all human beings, and everybody's guilty of clicking on that bad email or doing that bad thing on their network that they didn't intend it to be bad, but just forgot for that moment. So the best mitigation factor against those type of activities are constant training and awareness. What do you do with your workforce to make sure that they understand what the threats are that are out there and what they can do to mitigate against those threats? Most organizations in the federal government have a mandate to do annual, once a year, cybersecurity awareness training. We're actually at NICE advocating to change that policy. We don't think that an hour once a year is really the right way to go for that type of training. I think it's really much more effective if you do it much more frequently and maybe for less of a duration, like a 15 minutes once a quarter or every month, that focuses on specific activities that an individual would remember and actually change their behavior. When we talk about phishing attacks, people trying to spoof individuals, that this is really a legitimate email from someone inside your organization asking you to send them a password or some information that you should never put in an email, you have to be aware that those type of things happen all the time. So that's ongoing. So federal agencies are really grappling with this idea of increasing their training profile and doing a better job in that space. Now, on the other side, when people have decided consciously that they're going to become bad actors, that becomes a much more difficult problem to deal with. Certainly for the individual who is already cleared, has a security clearance, or has the keys to the kingdom, for whatever reason, they could be coerced, they could have just had a bad night, or some philosophical issue has come up and they've decided they're going to go rogue, so they've decided to do bad things that day. How do you prevent that or mitigate that from happening? I think it really depends on the policies that you have in place in your organization, the level of technology that you have in place to guard your systems. And then you probably need to take an additional step and have some mechanism that looks for outliers, looks for behavior that you wouldn't normally expect from individuals. The example being, everybody has that kind of routine, particularly in their cyberspace. I visit this database, I look at these files, this is normal business for my job. But today, I'm going to look at a system I've never looked at before. I'm going to spend a lot of time doing things that I've never done before. These might raise red flags that might require someone in security to take a closer look. But I'm sure our CISO here will have some more information about that as well.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think a once-a-year training program really is just the beginning. What we try to do is we have this ongoing relationship with our staff. It starts by really working with them and admitting just how hard this is. We know it's hard for them to get it right. It's hard for them to know everything they need to know, and so we try to be very respectful of where they're coming from and have a relationship that says we're in this together. We can actually show them ways where they can be part of our defense and help things get better. And we can help them. There's a lot we try to make it very easy for them to reach out to us when they're unsure about something and get the help they need. So we start out by admitting to them how hard it is and that we understand their problem. And then the next step is we just start thinking about, okay, so what is you talked about what happens when something goes bad. Just before most things that go bad comes a click. It's that mouse click that the user starts that opens the door to something that sometimes we don't want to happen. So we do a lot of work with our users to think about what's about to happen, what's going on before that click, what's going to happen when you click, what should you expect to see? Did you see something different? Okay, even if you clicked and you saw something that you don't think is right, give us a call right then and there, no recriminations. We'll help you through, see if it's okay or see if it's a problem. The sooner we remediate a problem, the better off we are. So we make that sort of year in, day in, day out relationship with them, one where they don't fear us, they view us as a source of help, and we let them know that we view them as a source of help.
So it sounds like continuous training is something that agencies should try to move toward. So what agencies or even private sector organizations have implemented some effective training programs already, and why do you think they were effective?
So in the federal space, there's a thing called FISMA, which is a document that really describes kind of best practices, and it's mandated that federal agencies adhere to the guidance and practices that are outlined in that document, a document actually produced by NIST, the organization I work for. And they really outline the kind of common sense things that need to go on a regular basis. We're really having a focus now. You mentioned continuous training. Really the catchphrase now is continuous monitoring of systems. It's a risk mitigation issue. You're always looking at your network and the activity that's happening on your network to be aware if something unusual is starting to happen. The threat vectors have changed so much. It used to be 20, 30 years ago that your main hacker was a young person looking to build a reputation. They want to get inside your network and mess up your website or make a funny saying happen. pretty harmless kind of stuff. It was just for bragging rights. Well, those days are long gone. Now we have things like advanced persistent threats where bad software gets into your system, the intent being not to be discovered, not to make anything unusual happen, so that it can steal information and send it out below the noise level. We've had instances where people's networks have been infected for years without them being aware of it until some specialist came in and found that software in there and was able to do something about it. So it really requires the constant monitoring to make sure that your systems are as safe as they can be.
Right. So I think, again, the question about what makes something effective is something we put a lot of thought into. There's just an awful lot of things you can do with the time and attention of your staff, but they've got work to do. And so what we're always trying to do is focus it in on the things that are working for them. So we start with, of course, we start with annual training. That's just a best practice that I think everybody's got to have as a foundation. And then we move along. We have our continuous program is called an awareness program, and we're trying to make everyone aware of what the threat is. We talk a lot about, so we try to help our users understand what kinds of threats are they going to see, what kinds of threats are coming at us as an organization, and then we're very engagement oriented. We want them to know what they can do in a variety of situations. That includes their own actions to take defense, or call us. That's always another action they can take. So we build on that awareness program, and then we've made it really easy. We have a program we call Suspicious, where if they have any doubts at all, there's an email. They can just send it to suspicious@mitre.org. Every user in the company knows that. Our president uses it. Our board of trustees uses it. Every person in the company knows about it. And so before something happens, they can send us an email, they can send us an attachment, we'll open it for them, make sure it's safe. We just are constantly working with them to make it as easy as clicking, because that's what we want to do. We want that alternative to that click to be something that they can do. And so we're constantly doing that. We know it's working because we know the difference between people who have received that training and haven't. We see how effective it is. And we have the success stories when people avoid a problem. We're able to say, well, how did you avoid it? Well, because I remembered Suspicious and I used that. So we're constantly evaluating what we do. We're always working with the users. And even in cases where users successfully avoid attacks, we go and dissect that incident, even though it didn't result in a compromise, and we say, what made that work for you? So we're constantly evaluating effectiveness.
Okay, so you have some techniques, you have constant evaluation, constant monitoring. How do you actually enforce what you are educating these individuals on? I mean, I don't like to use the word, but how do you test them? How do you quiz them to make sure that they are following the rules? Ernest?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Enforcement is a really tough issue. People's jobs depend so much on what they do in cyberspace and interacting with those machines. It's really hard to kind of take a draconian approach to, if you make a mistake, we're going to really come down on you hard. Just like you were describing at MITRE, you want to foster a team environment where people understand that they are able to report negative things that happen, and that it's not going to be such a bad outcome that I'm going to be afraid to tell my supervisors that, oh, I clicked on this bad thing by mistake, and please don't cut my hand off because I did that. It's interesting that you mentioned that usually it happens with a click. My experience has been that you actually even know the second you make that click that it was something wrong that you did. It almost hits you right away. So you have to have ways that are gentle in terms of reminding people, that wasn't a good thing. I think the training, education, awareness tends to reinforce that. Having a consistent policy within an organization and how you deal with these issues when they come up that make the employee comfortable in bringing those kind of issues to light, I think is key and important. I've heard of some organizations within the federal space, and DoD in particular, that have these little like couple of second training things that pop up every time someone logs onto their network. And if they don't answer the questions right, they'll get locked out of their network until they do a refresher course and get past that. So that is a way to not be, too hard on an individual, but at the same time reinforce bad practices and trying to get them to do the right thing.
Yeah, with our staff, I think you're right, and with our staff, I think what we find is that everybody really wants to, enforcement almost doesn't come to mind because everybody really wants the right outcome. Nobody wants bad things to happen. So we are pretty gentle. We have a very respectful relationship with our staff. When things go wrong, we always have the personal touch. We have a human engagement. We call them and say, okay, so what went wrong? What did you do? What happened next? Hey, did you see that in your training? Was there something you didn't understand? Can we show it to you again? In many cases, we'll go out and actually visit them in their office if that's what it takes. So we really try to meet them where they are with the fundamental assumption that they're trying for the right thing to happen. And so it's our job to try to help that. And then along with this sort of alternative to enforcement is exercise. So one of the things that we're doing now, which is just wildly popular, is we have a pilot program where voluntarily people can join the program, and we will send them a phishing email, something where we try to get them to click on that bad thing, and in that email are the same kind of clues that we've trained them to look for. And so they volunteer for this program, they get a little training, and then sometime over the next period of time, several months, they get several emails that give them this exercise, and then they get feedback on how they do. And so if they have problems, once again we have a chance to go over it with them. But because it's voluntary, people don't feel like they're being tricked. We're having really good PR. There's a lot of excitement. In fact, we had to turn volunteers away. We had too many people, and so we wanted to. We actually have a waiting list now as the trial expands. So it's been really successful, and our people are really responding to sort of a cooperative approach.
Now, next month is actually 4 weeks dedicated to cybersecurity awareness across the nation. There is a cybersecurity holiday, in essence. It's the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. NIST and NICE are playing a huge part. And the issue here is that cyber education, cyber awareness truly should be starting at preschool, is my understanding. They have iPads and tablets. Right now, the federal workforce has a lot of people who are just confronting the challenges of cybersecurity for the first time. But with Cybersecurity Awareness Month, how can companies, parents, schools go about training the youngest generations and also the older federal employees or corporate employees? I guess this question goes to Ernest. What new activities are planned this year, and what do you hope comes out of this year's Awareness Month that hasn't happened in years past?
Well, this is a great question. It gives me an opportunity to brag about my initiative a little bit. We kind of own Cybersecurity Awareness Month. The Department of Homeland Security has been running that program since just after 9/11. So they've got over, I guess this is going to be the 11th year that we've had that designation. The awareness campaign is the component one of a four-component decomposition, if you will, of the NICE initiative. We look at this national awareness campaign, formal education, and then workforce training and development, professionalization. The awareness campaign has been so successful, in fact, that the European Union has adopted the same model, and now for the last 2 years or 3 years, they've been holding October as Cybersecurity Awareness Month in Europe as well. So it's really catching on globally. What can be done? What can you do as an individual? So there's a website out of DHS called Stop, Think, Connect. This is kind of like our national campaign slogan. It really relates exactly to what was said about it. It often happens with a click. So the idea is that you should stop and think before you connect to anything on the internet about what are your intentions, what are you trying to do, and making sure that you're not being engaged in some kind of phishing attack. You can join that campaign on our website as a regular citizen or as an organization. You get access to a ton of free information that can be downloaded and used as part of a community effort at your local PTA, church group, or whatever, if you want to go out and really talk about this issue in your community. And what DHS does is really gotten beyond just October as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. They have teams of individuals now who will go out and spend maybe a week in a local community identifying local champions, people in the law enforcement, first responders, local government, K through 12 education, that are excited about cybersecurity and want to build their program of awareness within their own community. A couple of places stand out in my mind. San Diego has a Secure Our E-City initiative that embraces all of those ideas that I just mentioned and are very open to sharing that information with other cities that look to do the same thing. San Antonio, Texas has a major effort going on in the cybersecurity space. The number of military operations going on in San Antonio is a big military town, so they benefit from that as well. The entire state of Florida has been moving, as was indicated, that effort that you talked about me doing at the Kennedy Space Center was really initiated by a group called the Global Institute for Cybersecurity Research. This group is a combination of NASA, Boeing, state government, local government, academia. All of them rallied together around this workforce issue. As the shuttle operations came to an end, they were on the cusp of losing some 6,000 highly trained and skilled employees, which you can imagine was a major economic hit to that area. So this research center stood up to capture as many of those employees as they could, retrain them into cybersecurity work, and keep them employed in the area. So lots of work in that space. As far as this month, this year, individually, if you go to that website, you'll see a posting of what we do now is we have themes for each of the week that relate to things like critical infrastructure protection. That's in alignment with the current administration's policy about critical infrastructure in this country is 85% in the hands of the private sector. There are huge amounts of cybersecurity issues across all 16 of the critical infrastructures, that being like energy, transportation, healthcare, food, the list goes on and on. Again, there's a website that'll tell you what all those are as well. So we focus on events around the country. We focus on engagement with organizations that may or may not have been engaged before, and really try to do things that are exciting and interesting to get as many people out and involved as possible. I think we're going to have a really good year. The president actually comes out and makes that designation every year. We've been successful in having them do that.
Okay. Is MITRE doing anything?
Well, yeah. So we're lucky in that we have an active program. So sort of every month is Cyber Awareness Month for us. But a lot of our staff and employees, they all have loved ones at home. A lot of them have computers, and so Cyber Awareness Month is still important for us. So we build on that foundation. We really tap into a lot of the resources you were just talking about, so that it's harder for us to help people to know what to do at home. But those resources are out there. So that the first thing we can do is help our staff sort of lead the way in their communities, whether they be at home or in the other organizations, the nonprofits or the church or whatever. We help them be sort of evangelists for the message and know where the resources are that everybody can use. And then we build on that internally. We start the month, our chief security officer and the guy that is doing our cyber strategy for our sponsors really starts the month with situational awareness. We sort of understand where the threat, because we're very threat-based, so we're constantly talking about, well, what threats are we facing? How do we need to change what we're doing? We're constantly evolving our strategy. So we talk about that and make sure people sort of understand what we're trying to prevent. And then we go on throughout the month. We talk about what things that we've been doing internally. We often are writing papers. We just had a book published, so there's a number of things where we get more information out in the hands of our staff. And then we talk about, in many cases, this year we've open sourced some tools, and so there are tools out there that we're giving away. We can make people aware of that. And then finally, we wrap up the month. We talk about our research and development program. So we look at sort of what's on the drawing board for things that we might be able to do a year or two from now. We try to, in all those things we're doing, we're trying to capture people's imagination so that they can engage with us. There's a lot of times the really good ideas just come from somebody saying, well, here's my problem, and why can't you do this? And so we're constantly trying to make that a two-way conversation where we're not just pushing things out at them, but we're really trying to listen throughout the month. So
it's okay to admit that you don't know what a good password is, and you've been using the same password on all of your accounts, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
It's not okay that you're doing that,
okay,
but it's great to admit it and get some help.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to move on to Q&A and get some of your questions answered. Again, you can tweet us at #ThreatwatchViewcast, and we'll try to help you out. Okay, so I have, so here's one question. Some experts say it's not possible to actually train every single employee. Some might not get it, some might not willfully get it, as Ernest was getting at. And they say cybersecurity must become automated, and that technology should just take over, make a user change that password from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And, will the government ever get to the point where systems can defend themselves without employee intervention?
So that's an interesting, it's almost a philosophical question. There's two camps, really, that talk about the technological silver bullet. Will we ever be able to develop systems that are 100% secure, regardless of what the human being does? And then there's another camp that says, well, as long as you have human beings in the loop, they'll always be the weakest link in the system, and there is no technological silver bullet that will ultimately overcome that. So I think that we're really, the reality is a mix of both. You certainly want to push your technological solutions to the limit that makes them still useful. For example, this issue about strong passwords, there are systems out there in place now. Certainly the federal government, the systems that I use, force us to change our passwords every 90 days. They force you to use what they call strong passwords. You can't use regular English words in your passwords. You can't use consecutive numbers. You must use a mix of uppercase, lowercase, special character, all kinds of rules that go into building a strong password. There are even some tricks like mnemonics that you can use, like the cow jumped over the moon and the first letter of each one of those words. There's all kinds of tricks like that that you can use to do that. You started off the question with you can't train everyone. Certainly you can provide the training to everyone. Whether or not everyone takes it or not is certainly a different issue. I've seen, my experience with industry anyway, has been that the larger corporations, the larger organizations that have the resources are able to apply them and really get those training programs out and make them rigorous and really get some benefit out of. Where your problem really comes in is your small and medium-sized organizations that don't have the kind of resources that they can put into that kind of training program. Then you're really coming up into a really hard place of how you do that. You have to convince C-suite individuals, your CEOs, CFOs, CTOs, of the ROI, the return on investment of putting money against this problem now before you've actually experienced a breach. I've seen some statistics that say for small businesses, something like 80% of them that have suffered a major breach go out of business within 2 years after that breach has occurred. So it really becomes a big deal with that. You got to do both. You can't say it's all the people's fault. You can't say it's all the technology's fault. You have to pay attention to both aspects because they're both going to be with you for the duration.
Right. I think all of us can relate to what's behind that question, which is the frustration with how hard it is. And we do a lot of work to try to make it easier. We try to automate patching. We try to provide dashboards so that people know, hey, you know, there's something you're supposed to do that you haven't done. So we do a lot of work, but I would just never want to give up what the users can do for us. You know, as part of our threat-based defense, what the users do for us is that they're better than, in many cases, some of the automation. With the right motivation and training, you know, that, for example, that suspicious program that I talked to you about. So at MITRE, it's very active, and 10% of the attacks that we detect come only from humans. So no technology device has found that attack, only the human has. And so, you know, the humans have become a sensor for us, and they're more adaptive, you know. So as the adversary is adapting and trying new attacks, it's funny, people can learn new things and adapt to what they're doing much quicker than the technology can be invented and deployed. Yeah. So, you know, I absolutely want to respect that. We want to make it easy for our users to do the right thing and try to reach everybody wherever they are. But I can't give them up. I need them too bad. The users are really one of our main lines of defense.
Okay. Next question. Has the target breach, where a contractor was the weakest link, changed the training discussion? How so?
Yeah, I don't think so, particularly in the federal space. I mean, Snowden was a contractor, you know, so, you know, the contractor thing really doesn't make a lot of difference. They're employees. I've worked in organizations in the federal government that were dominated by contractors, an office that might have employed some 20 people, and out of those 20 people, only 2 of us were actually federal employees. Everybody else was contractors, and we really treated each other intentionally as if we were all the same to infuse that kind of team camaraderie and esprit de corps. You don't want to have divisions, artificial divisions in your workforce. It just doesn't make for a happy place. So the only issue that I see with contractors versus you know, federal employees is sometimes it's more difficult to control the kind of training and education that happens on the contractor side, because they do work for a different organization, whereas the people who are federal employees, you have direct control over what kind of training and things that they are exposed to. But for the most part, we're finding that the organizations that provide contract personnel kind of follow suit. They look to the federal government for what's happening in that space and try to model their workforce on that for those exact reasons that I just described, that they don't want to see major differences between the two workforce, because they work so closely together, and that close working together is necessary for their mission to be successful in most cases. A good example of that, again, kind of blowing the horn of the NICE initiative, we produced a thing called the National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework, which kind of decomposes the field of cybersecurity into 7 different categories, some 32 different functional skill sets. And so the federal government has really adopted that. We're having all the federal agencies map their workforce to this. We've added these 2-digit elements. The Office of Personnel Management has mandated that all the federal agencies update their database to include, for those individuals that do work in cybersecurity, this 2-digit code. So we, for the first time in the federal government, will have a really granular understanding of what our workforce is, what kind of work they do. We can do gap analysis to make sure they've got the right training and all of that. On the contractor side, particularly organizations like ISC Squared, CompTIA, SANS, the ones that are involved in cybersecurity certifications, they're doing the same thing. They've seen the value of this framework document, and they're mapping their certifications to it. So individuals can go to their maps and see, if I'm going to try for this particular job, I need this particular certification, and here's how it fits in this taxonomy of the entire field of cybersecurity. Having this kind of common taxonomy out there allows agencies, large and small, private sector, public sector, to talk about the field of cybersecurity using the same language, which has a major benefit.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. It hasn't. For a lot of people, I don't think it's changed the problems that where you have things that are happening in the news and the latest intrusion. it's really not changing things too much, because I think we're all realizing that we're really part of a much larger ecosystem. And so you have to think about not only your contractors, but all your vendors. Who gave you that hardware? Who gave you that software? You know, I'm partnered with this online website for some function in my business. And so what we know is that we're really just part of a much larger ecosystem, and to some extent we share a security problem, and we have to share with each other how we're thinking about that problem, what we're doing about it, and I think you're just gonna see a lot more of that happening over time.
So you were talking about the contractors being not just employees you have working here in the States, but the people in manufacturing plants in other countries are part of that.
Absolutely. It's much bigger problem than just one HVAC contractor in your building.
Yeah, there's a whole field called supply chain risk management. You know, you think about not only the supply chains for hardware and actual devices, but the software supply chain. A lot of software is written overseas, and are they putting back doors in it? You know, are you sure that this software, as you buy it off the shelf, is doing what it's supposed to be doing? It's a huge issue, and you're absolutely right that we're all connected now. You go back to the Thomas Friedman book of a number of years ago, The World is Flat, and it talks about how the internet and technology is bringing everything closer and closer together. It's very true.
Okay. Again, I just want to remind you, if you have questions, hashtag Threatwatch Viewcast. I do have a question that is related to the international aspect, and that's what employee training strategies have other countries used that you think federal managers maybe could and should replicate within their agencies?
That's interesting. So I've traveled a lot in the last few years. I was just telling some of the colleagues here that I was in Beijing, China, back in May. I'm going to Prague in next month, actually, to speak at an AFCEA event there. I've been to London a couple of times, and all over the globe. In fact, it's such a pervasive problem that all the developed countries and even the underdeveloped countries are looking at this issues in exactly the way you described. And so when I find myself in these environments, these international settings, that's primarily one of the things that I'm looking for: new techniques, new information, new ways to do things that other countries might be doing that I'm not aware of, that we can incorporate. I got to tell you, though, that the impression has been over the last couple of years that the United States is still kind of leading the pack. You know, most of the time when I'm in those environments, the other countries are looking to me to see how we're doing it here so they can duplicate that there. Most of the countries that I've encountered are about 4 or 5 years behind where we are now in our thought evolution about how to deal with these systems. So we're still kind of the world leader, I think, in this space. In some sense, that's part of the problem. You know, people shoot at you because you're at top, but and in other cases, it's really kind of gratifying that you still get that kind of respect on the international level. It's not to say that there aren't some programs out there that are doing really good things. Most of the times when you run into those, the fact that they're being very successful usually has to do with scale. When you have a smaller scale environment, it's really easier to implement things that would not scale into larger environments. And so that's usually the difference. One of the things that is kind of catching hold that we're doing here in the United States, we have this whole system of universities that have received a designation from the National Security Agency and Department of Homeland Security as Centers of Academic Excellence in Information Assurance Education. Some 183 universities now across this country have that designation, which means that they've mapped their curriculum to a certain set of standards, education, training. They have the right faculty and the right facilities on their campus to be a center of excellence in this field. So that has caught on really well in this country, and so much so, it's starting to catch on internationally. The United Kingdom has about 8 universities in their system. Australia has a number of universities that are interested in adopting the same type of system there. Even in my trip to Beijing, I mean, we often feel like we're in competition or almost conflict with China, but at a certain level, they're looking to do the same kind of things that we're doing here, people still look at the education system in the United States as certainly the higher education system as being world class. Some 60 universities in China are interested in adopting this Center of Academic Excellence model to do the same thing over there. Bringing in the idea of ethics and doing the right thing from a computer science, from a hacking standpoint, is becoming critically important.
Bill, anything come to mind?
I don't think I don't think I have much to add. We're always listening for good ideas, but right now a lot of people are asking us what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Going back to the first question, someone wants to know, is training cheaper than technologies that are supposed to protect networks?
Is training cheaper? Well, I think it depends. It depends on the training and the technology. Certainly, training costs can be very significant if you're talking about a workforce of several thousand people. That becomes a big budget item, where a lot of times a piece of technology will scale up much cheaper than that. But then again, you might have other technological systems that are just very, very expensive. If you've got to have a supercomputer on your back end of a piece of technology, then you're really talking a lot of money. So I think it depends on the type of training that you're doing, the size of your workforce, versus the type of technology that you're trying to put in place. But these are the kind of if-then-else questions that chief information officers and chief financial officers have to struggle with all the time. How do I make that balance?
Right. Well, I think what we do know is that training is a lot cheaper than the alternative.
Yeah.
And so, it's not an either or. You don't get to pick whether you use technology or you train your users.
Very true.
I think what we're trying to do is array, a whole set of things that form a layered defense. And so it's hard to tell. There are some technology that's cheaper than training. There's some that's more, and we have to sort of array them in a way that makes sense based on the threat we're facing.
Sure.
Is there a risk that training can reveal too much about system defenses to potential adversaries? Does that let out some of your OPSEC secrets?
It's definitely something we think about. We do not tell our users every single thing we do to defend our company. We talk about the kinds of things we do, and we talk about especially how we want them to be engaged. So we do think about OPSEC, and we do try to make sure that we're not, unduly advertising our defenses. In the defensive community, that debate runs wider, not just amongst training your users, but how much should companies share with each other, and how much should, as a community, should we talk about our defensive measures? And I think right now what the consensus is that we're far better off being more open about what can be done and sharing. So
information sharing is a big issue in the cybersecurity space. One of the ways that organizations help protect themselves is if another organization has been breached and they share that information, it makes this other organization better able to deal with it in a timely manner. This tension between defense and offense is always kind of there, and you're always kind of worried about the operational security of what you're doing, about giving away too much information through your training programs. But I don't think it's a big concern. I think most of the people that are really doing the offensive work, or even the high-level defensive work, the kind of education and training that they get is specialized to those tasks. Whereas in general, when you talk about education for the general workforce, you're not going to get to that level of specification or sophistication even that would give away any of those kind of secrets.
Okay, it looks like we're out of time. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Ernest. Can you all, viewers out there, hold tight. We're going to now move to our next segment with Mark Michelli and General Dynamics IT. Thanks.
welcome back, everyone. I want to thank our panel that just gave us a wonderful conversation there, and I want to thank all of our viewers for tuning in, and welcome back. My name is Mark McDuffie. I'm the Custom Content Editor for Government Executive Media Group, and I'm here today with Nick Leshak from General Dynamics Information Technology. We're going to continue the conversation about information security in the workforce. So first, just a few words and a quick introduction about Nick. As Chief Information Security Officer and Director for General Dynamics Information Technology Cybersecurity Services, Nick Leshak is responsible for developing and executing the Enterprise Information Security Program to ensure General Dynamics IT and customer information assets are protected while maximizing their availability to ensure business growth and development. Mr. Leshak also supports General Dynamics IT's cyber solution strategy and efforts across the company to deliver advanced strategy, advanced customer-centric cyber solutions. Mr. Leshak leverages 14 years of cybersecurity experience leading information assurance programs in the defense and intelligence communities to guide General Dynamics IT's multidisciplinary approach to addressing both internal and customer cyber defense challenges. Mr. Leshak's career in the cybersecurity world includes experience working both IT and cyber operations at some of the most notable organizations around the globe. As a member of the U.S. Army Reserves, he delivered his industry experience while leading operations for the Regional Computer Emergency Response Team defending the Department of Defense Southwest, Asia Theater of Operations during Operations Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom. He served in various leadership positions over a 13-year career as an Army communications officer, including managing tactical and strategic communication systems and culminating with service as a presidential communications officer for the White House Communications Agency under the Clinton administration. Mr. Leshak holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from the United States Military Academy and a master's degree in computer science and engineering from Pennsylvania State University. So before we go any further, just another quick thanks to General Dynamics Information Technology for supporting today's viewcast, and thanks to Nick for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure.
So I just want to jump right in with our first couple of questions here.
Sure.
So what is General Dynamics Information Technology's approach to raising awareness and developing employee capabilities regarding cyber threats in the federal market?
So, I think that's a great question, Mark, and I'll tell you first off, thanks for having me. It was great. It's great to follow on the heels of Bill and Ernest. They had some really good comments from both the MITRE and from the NIST perspective, and they hit a lot of key points that really kind of reinforced any cyber awareness program to focus around the user and getting the right information to the either the member of staff that you have or to the user group if you're supporting your users. You want to get them the right information at the right time. Because one of the things that really the preponderance of evidence around the attacks that we're seeing today is the cyber attackers are going after the user because they know that they're pretty good at getting a user to click a link, answer an email, download a file, execute something for them. And that gives them the foothold inside the enterprise, the agency, and gives them the starting point that they really need. So, that's really the key start point. And for us, we're very focused on helping agencies and customers develop training programs that are exciting, engaging, and provide them that kind of continuous awareness about cybersecurity so that it's kind of always at the forefront of their mind.
Now, can you talk a little bit about some of the various training approaches General Dynamics Information Technology has in place that give feds opportunities to understand and navigate some of these threats?
Absolutely. So let me first talk about kind of a three-pronged approach that we use internal to the company as one example. That's really focused around user awareness training. And then I'd like to touch a little bit about how we train our professional staff, which we have thousands that are out actively partnering with federal agencies and government system owners to make sure their systems are capable and secure. So internal to the company, we really focus in three aspects. The first is we want to ensure that we're developing agile, innovative, and really engaging training methodologies. So we get away from that static kind of PowerPoint click-through training and really get to something that's more exciting, it's more topical, it's relevant to today's threats, and really want to get the users and the staff members' attention. The second area was cited by some of our previous speakers was really around that kind of constant awareness. Our user base is really sensitized to problems in the environment. I'll talk a little bit about that in another few minutes, but they're worried about cybersecurity themselves. So what we found with our staff is that if you can give them the right message, the right kind of little vignette at the right time, they're really interested in getting that data and they make good use of it. And the final is, again, something our previous speakers talked about is, keystone events like Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's really important to kind of give yourself an anchor point to get everybody's attention focused with some real key events that kind of rallies everybody around the flag of doing the right thing for cyber hygiene and making sure our staff and our professionals do the right thing. So that's the user piece. On the management side, or really the IT practitioner side, we've really embraced initiatives like DoD's 8570 kind of skills framework methodology, as well as the new NIST framework around categorizing types of jobs. And we ensure and commit lots of resources to making sure our professionals meet those criteria. And that brings a really aware and educated set of IT professionals to the fore and helps us partner with our customers to deliver very strong and secure systems.
So what else are you doing to ensure good cyber hygiene?
So one of the other things that we're doing for good cyber hygiene is really, again, to that point about creating engaging training. A quick vignette. In the past, the way you deliver training was you'd you'd educate your workforce is you'd write a policy. It would go in a binder, the binder would go on the shelf, and then it would all gather dust. We really have to shift away from that methodology, and one of the things we're able to do for Health and Human Services is to develop a training program to help them educate really the national healthcare workforce around small and medium practices in how to protect healthcare information. And what we did is we leveraged gamification, we've leveraged the use of avatars and technologies kind of like the SimCity games to really drive user engagement, make them vested in the outcome of the training because they're playing a game. And by getting them engaged, well, lo and behold, after a 10-minute game, they've actually learned a bunch of really good stuff about how to protect their customer and their patient's data. So that's kind of an example of how you have to drive innovation into training, make it engaging and compelling, and it'll pull the users right in.
Well, that's a perfect segue to my next question, kind of dealing with more of the technology issues and how you use technology to drive it. And we've talked a lot about how the workforce can prevent and handle cyber threats, but what are you doing from a technology perspective, in addition to what you've already mentioned, that will help alleviate some of these stressors?
It's another great question, and again, I'll tie back to a question that came in on the previous webcast. So a user asked a really pointed question, which was, well, hey, this is all too complicated for me. I can't hope to figure all this out. Can't the systems take care of it for me? And I think the panelists gave a great response in that it's a balanced approach. Well, at GDIT, I think we offer services and capabilities to our customers that cover all of those balance points. I've talked a little bit about what we do for our users and our customers' users around developing really innovative technologies to help getting them compelling and useful information, ideally without them even realizing they're being trained. And then the other part of the balance is the technology systems piece, and that is helping our customers develop security architecture frameworks that helps them adapt to technology change in the context of a broader strategy. We help them develop secure or assured applications and systems, so that kind of gives the user, again, that safety blanket, knowing the environment they're working in is protecting them. So those are the systems pieces. And we think when you combine the systems pieces with the user awareness strategies we can help customers develop, those two things together really kind of give you the complete coverage to help you operate more securely and really protect your agency's information.
So I'm getting the signal that we're about running out of time. I was wondering if there's anything else you'd like to add or have any final thoughts you'd like to share.
No, just to kind of reiterate the point where, we really think it's a full spectrum of capabilities that we all have to commit to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, we're protecting our family's data, and we're protecting our customer and agency data. So we really have to combine good technology implemented well with great awareness programs, and really, to one key point the previous speakers talked about was we have to look to the future. So we've got to take that technology piece, and we have to take the training and awareness piece, and we've got to take that to the next generation of folks that are growing up to be our cyber defenders, our users, and really the folks that are going to be running the government in the future.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and your insight today. We really appreciate you making the time to come out and speak with us. And thanks again to our viewers for tuning in today. This viewcast will be online for the next 3 months, so if you'd like to view it again or share it with any of your colleagues, you should feel free to do that through the archive. And that's all we've got today, so thank you very much for joining us.